Assalamu alaikum viewers. Welcome to this fourth lecture of International Marketing subject. Our last two lectures were focused on international marketing process, in which we started to discuss some of the very basic and fundamental concepts on which the whole foundation of international marketing subject is built. Core to any marketing opportunity in international markets is the set of unfulfilled and underfulfilled needs. Well, that's where the opportunity is really built up. We have to really see international markets where the customers have needs which are not being totally fulfilled, or they are underfulfilled. These needs can be biogenic needs which really drive us to seek products and services to survive life in this world. And then there are psychogenic needs which we acquire in the process of becoming a member of a society. And then there are utilitarian needs that we want to consume products and services which offer more value to us, which offer the functions we desire. And certainly there are hedonic needs that relate to our own liking, our own pleasures, and our own preferences. So if these needs exist, so there exists an opportunity for marketers. These needs then translate into solutions, the manifestations. Means if I am hungry, the solution is an appropriate food. If I need to travel, the solution is an appropriate automobile or a coach or an airline, and so on and so forth. So these needs translate into wants. And then out of many wants, many possible solutions, the target consumers then choose few depending on their affordability and available choices. And then marketers come in to offer their products and services in order to satisfy these wants, satisfy these demands. So hence there is an opportunity out there. But then whenever consumers are acquiring products and services, especially in a sophisticated competitive markets, they have their expectations. And if products come up to their expectations, they are satisfied. So the expectations are important here, and the marketer's ability to provide products and services that consistently satisfy those expectations is absolutely important. That really determines the aspect of value, that how the target customers perceive the value in certain brands, in certain products and services. Now these values are perceived values, not just based on the price, the monetary aspects. They are also based on one's emotions. So there are emotional advantages, emotional costs in acquiring and consuming products. So psychological benefits and psychological costs in acquiring and in making decisions to acquire products and services. Then costs are not just monetary costs. They are also energy costs. People have to spend perhaps effort and time and energy to acquire products and services. So certain marketers which can reduce these costs can really increase the value. So value is important here, which marketers really have to pursue in order to be successful. Then beyond value comes in the ability to deliver that value. That's only possible in today's complex business environment when firms adopt appropriate strategies and create value chains, that they are able to align all the activities and energies towards certain desired value. They are able to reinforce all their activities towards acquiring those values and services. And together their effort is an optimal effort. So that's the gist of what we basically discussed in our last two lectures. And I will suggest that you again and again go through these topics, because these are the foundation of a marketing opportunity. Unless we are very clear about these foundations, their dynamics, and how they come together in order to determine an opportunity, and how marketers can really work to provide the sort of value which the customer is looking for in order to satisfy needs and wants, the marketer can never be successful. So these are the basic concepts, these are the foundations, these are the fundamentals of marketing on which the whole structure of marketing is built. So that's why we have spent some time thrashing out these concepts. So now these concepts lead towards a marketing process which marketers undertake in order to conceptualize, in order to prepare marketing programs and deliver and implement those marketing programs. So in this third lecture on international marketing process, basically we are going to sum up the whole aspects of international marketing process, the 5 steps which are involved in this process, and we are going to detail these 5 steps. And our rest of lectures on international marketing then will be really focused on these individual steps in the international marketing process. Now, the first step of the international marketing process is to able to identify the opportunities in the marketplace. There are many international markets, and these markets vary. They vary in their behaviors, they vary in their needs, they vary in their disposable income. They also vary in terms of their culture and social behaviors and consumers' own purchase and consumption behavior and processes. So it becomes much more complex to be able to determine the opportunities in the market, which are very diverse and which are far away. At the heart of these opportunities are unfulfilled and underfulfilled needs. Really, the marketers then have to focus on individual target markets to be able to identify target customers there, and in order to study them, to be able to find what of their needs are really not fulfilled or underfulfilled and their priority needs. And they can vary from market to market. And then from there we can build up that how the customers or target people in various societies translate those needs into manifestations. The solutions they require for addressing those needs. To be able to understand the manifestation is absolutely important. Well, as a human, often our needs are more or less the same when we talk of biogenic needs. We feel hungry the same way, but we do not really prefer the same type of food. Well, we need to be secure and safe. We have our social needs, our belonging needs, our esteem needs. From needs point of view, they may look quite similar, but when it comes to their solutions, their manifestations, the type of solutions which various customers are looking for in various markets vary very widely. So it requires a deep understanding of every foreign market in which a marketer really wants to operate. To be able to know the people, to be able to know the societies, to be able to know their economic situation, to be able to understand their cultures, to be able to know how people behave in terms of acquiring products and services, how they behave in terms of consuming those products and services, what are their expectations, and these expectations can vary from market to market depending on the experiences of people within those markets. We can take example of advanced countries in the West. Well, there customarily firms have been providing quality products. They have providing quality solutions. And the firms have been also very active in providing after-sale support and after-sale service. The advertising is very competitive, very advanced. The media for advertising is very advanced. So the consumers and customers in those markets are quite accustomed to these type of environments and these type of experiences. That's what they expect. If a foreigner has to go into these advanced markets and want to successfully sell products and services, then it is paramount that those products and services are sold with the same sophistication with which the buyers in those markets are accustomed to. So really, a wide assessment is required in order to determine the market opportunities in every individual market in foreign countries. Again, it's very important that how needs are translated into manifestations. That's wants. The process which is adopted by consumer to translate needs into wants is driven by their value system, their social aspects, their experiences, and of course their knowledge base, and of course the choices which exist in the marketplace. So the firms have to study not only the aspects of consumers and buyers, but also the aspects of markets, the competition, the competitors, in order to be very, very clear about the marketing opportunities out there in terms of unfulfilled needs, unfulfilled wants, or underfulfilled needs, and correspondingly underfulfilled wants. It's easy for us to know our culture because we live here. We inherit such cultures, we inherit such societies. We take many things for granted. And our behaviors and our actions are driven by how society, which is our immediate society, reacts. So often we say humans follow the concept which is the concept of looking glass self. That what we do or what we choose to do really depends on how people are going to react to that. So we adjust accordingly and perform accordingly. So knowing the society is of paramount importance and it's very critical for us to show our own behaviors. So humans are social animals. We have to live in the society, we have to find our place in the society, which is defined by the society itself. So without really knowing the society and how social system works and how the social behaviors are embedded into actions in foreign markets, we really cannot truly understand the nature of needs and how needs are manifested into wants. So far deeper knowledge is required. That's where operating in international markets become quite complex. Because we, as a marketer, have to develop the capability to put ourselves in the shoes of other persons. It's already quite difficult in our own markets, but it becomes really very complex when we are talking about other culture, where people are looking at things and looking at every situation with the lens of their own values, their own cultures, their own social aspects, their own laws, their own regulations. So it's very abstract. So a lot of creativity is required here. A lot of effort is required here. A lot of brilliance in research is required here in order to be able to correctly identify the market opportunities, which are essentially in the form of unfulfilled or underfulfilled needs and how they are manifested into wants and demands. So this is the first step. The second step is to identify the target markets. We have discussed in our previous sessions that it is just not possible for a firm to fulfill every sort of need, every sort of want, to satisfy every type of a customer, because the markets vary, they vary significantly. There are numerous customers in those markets, perhaps in millions, for fast-moving consumer products. And these customers vary very, very widely in terms of their backgrounds, in terms of their preferences, their choices, and their perceived values vis-a-vis various products and brands, and various categories of products and brands. So it's not possible for any one firm to be able to satisfy a whole range of customers. There are certain brands which have chosen to be only upmarket brands. Their image, the type of products they want to or they can create or they do create are upmarket products, for example. Luxury cars, luxury clothing. Now these are the type of products which perhaps are very suitable for affluent people, for rich people, successful business people, people who are successful in various strong careers. But then are these products relevant to middle income people or lower than middle income people? Perhaps not. Then we really have to see the capability of the firm to be able to create products then for the middle income and lower middle income. It requires a very different set of competencies. It requires a very different set of image to be able to become relevant to affluent people, rich people, upmarket people. The firm has to create an exclusive image. The products have to be distributed through exclusive channels, through those retail shops or those distribution channels which are having access to affluent people. In upmarket shopping areas perhaps, with upmarket image, where these rich people travel, they walk, they prefer to go. But then these type of outlets, these type of qualities become quite irrelevant to middle income and lower income people. They would not want to pay so much for the exclusivity of the image, but they want basic products, nice products. Well, average quality is okay for them. They can't afford much. So for them, the good value proposition is good enough quality, but for medium price or perhaps lower price. Now, to be able to create such products are very different from creating very exclusive products. Different type of image is required. Different type of competence is required. So, is it possible for a firm to acquire both set of capabilities very successfully? Well, that's always a question, and often it is not the case. The firms then have to really choose which segment is more suitable for them on various criteria, and then they have to decide to leave other segments so that they can focus their effort, their energies towards the target segment which they have chosen, which they feel is more suitable for them to focus their effort, where perhaps they are better off compared with competing firms, and hence they have better opportunities for success. So we can see many firms and many brands only serving the needs of exclusive customers, more upmarket customers. Then we see many other firms and brands offering similar products, similar clothing, perhaps fashion items, perhaps automobile, perhaps, but then targeting towards middle class or lower middle class. So the firms have to then identify their target segments. And we will study in our later chapter in more detail how to identify and evaluate these segments. But briefly, the firms have to see the size of those segments, because the size of segment determines the size of opportunity. If the segment is small enough, is very small, then the opportunity to sell to that segment is also less. So really the size of segment. The other aspect is the growth opportunity of the segment. If the segment is not growing, what's of it's declining, well, perhaps it's not a good segment to target them. Because long term the segment is not going to grow, it's going to shrink. And if the firm really want to grow, want to keep growing, then that is not the best opportunity out there. So the growth of the segment. Then firm has also to see its own capabilities vis-a-vis the requirement of the segment. That what attributes that target segment is expecting in the products and services, whether the firm is able to provide those attributes or not. Some customers want very durable products. Then there can be some other customer who want very innovative products. But then there are others who want cheaper products. Some want products to be conveniently delivered to them. Some want products to be specifically tailored to their needs. So firm really has to see its capabilities. Are these capabilities good to provide high quality products or innovative products? Or firm is good at providing low cost products? Or firm has the capability to customize product for each every or small number of consumers and buyers. So depending on the capability of the firm, and if those capability of the firm also match with the requirements of the segment, then it's fantastic. That's where the opportunity lies. So the firm has to see the size of the segment, whether the segment has growth opportunities, whether the firm's own capabilities also match with what people in those segments require. Then firm has also to see the competition, because in order to win, a firm has to be able to provide better value than other competing firms. So clearly, if other competing firms are able to provide better value, better products for that target segment, then our firm has little chance to succeed. So all these aspects are very important. The size of the segment, the growth of the segment, the expectations of the segment, and our capabilities which are relevant for that segment, and how are we strong in those capabilities compared with the target market. So that requires important capabilities of forecasting, assessment, to study the segment from its growth potential, to be able to study the segment from its actionability potential, accessibility potential, and all these factors will help us then to identify the out of various segments that offer opportunities, which segment or which set of segments is perhaps more relevant to our firm. So this is the second step in the international marketing process, to identify the target segments. So once the firm has identified the target segments in international market, now it's time the firm has to really adopt an international marketing strategy. We have been discussing this concept of strategy off and on in our previous lectures. Strategy is the name of making choices. That firm chooses to work in a certain way and chooses not to work in a certain other ways. And various researchers at various times have studied successful firms in various industries and have proposed the type of strategies which these firms which have been successful had adopted. Professor Michael Porter, according to his famous research, has identified successful firms which had adopted any one of his 3 generic strategies: cost focus, niche marketing, and differentiation. So according to him, successful firms adopted any one of these strategies. Either they concentrated to become low-cost producer and supplier of a product. So the firm aligned all its activities, its manufacturing activities, its procurement activities, its human resource functions, its finance functions, its distribution functions, and all the functions were aligned towards providing that value, that the firm was able to deliver and manufacture products at a price at which no people were able to produce and deliver. Hence, these firms were successful, they were able to give a superior value in terms of low cost, always. So those of the buyers who were really interested in buying quality products at low cost, well, this is the best option, and the firms are very successful. But then in the same industry, we could see other firms which had adopted other strategies were also successful. According to Professor Porter, the firms which opted for differentiation, rather than focusing only on costs, they rather opted to produce products and services which were different from competing firms. Now, in order to produce different products and services, a firm has to do things either differently or has to do the same things in a different way. So these difference in capabilities require superior skills. More talented people, better scientists, better manufacturing systems. It also requires a unique advertising and marketing program to build the image that this firm and this product is different from others. Maybe different in features, different in attributes. There's some apparel where the fabric is very fine, so it's different from others because the fabric is very fine. It feels nice, it feels smooth. But then there are other type of apparel where fabric can be very strong. Or then there are other type of apparel where they can be very contemporary in fashion, differentiated from others. Differentiation requires very different type of capabilities. It requires firm to be able to create superior products on certain critical attitude compared to all the competing firms. But that also requires the firm to be able to tell, to be able to communicate to the target customers of that differentiation. That requires investment into marketing, and that also required creativity in marketing and communication to be able to convince the target customers that really our product and our services and our way of delivering it to customers and our way of providing after sales service is really superior on certain important aspects. These are important to the target customers. So differentiation requires superior skills, it requires different skills, it requires skills which are different not only but also relevant to certain important requirements of the target customers. And such firms have been successful to sell their products and services and have been able to make profit. But then there is also a third category, according to Professor Porter, the firms which did not opt to target larger segments, but they concentrated on small niche segments. And they specialized in these segments. We can see certain hospitals only specializing, say, in cardiology aspects, in the heart diseases. And they specialize very strongly in this aspect. So, their target segment is smaller, only the patients or the target patients who are really interested in seeking to get better in this area. But then, there are also many automakers. Instead of manufacturing and targeting very wide segments, they opt to produce specialty cars, maybe very special performance automobiles, but targeting towards small niche segments. Super luxury cars, Formula 1 cars are examples where manufacturers have concentrated on that niche only. But there they have super specialization. And they target to achieve a bigger market share in those niche segments. So the firms which were able to target these specialty niches and were able to gain significant market share in those niches through their level of specialization and their level of understanding and links with those target segments were also able to make more profits. So according to Michael Porter, the firms which were successful had adopted one of these three strategies, and they had aligned all their activities and they optimized all their activities towards targeting those segments and targeting those type of values. But then there are other researchers who have come up and also made their own studies, and they have suggested various other ways in which firms have been able to be successful. The firms which were market leaders, well, they had to adopt very different strategies as a market leader. If a firm is having a very large market share, then it suits that firm to educate or to communicate or to help the target segment in order to expand or increase the consumption of that product. If a firm has leading market share, has substantial market share in coffee business, and if overall market starts to drink more coffee, then the market leader would tend to benefit more. So the type of communication, the type of advertisement which is targeted towards increasing the consumption of that product in the overall market is going to help the market leader more than anybody else. But this sort of strategy may not suit a small player in the market. A smaller player may opt to challenge the leader, adopt such strategies which challenge the market position of the leader through communication, through advertising, through aggressive product innovation, product delivery, to such aggressive strategies. Or firms may choose to be market follower, not to challenge the leader, but to quietly follow, produce and deliver, well, same or similar products and services the leader does, not to engage into type of aggressive advertisement which challenges the market leader. So depending on the situation, it's a different strategy which is suitable for different type of firm. A third type of research has identified various other types of strategies which firms have adopted and have been successful. According to research, the firms which adopted the strategy of operational excellence, the ability to deliver products more efficiently in less time to market, makes a firm more successful. But then there are other types of firms which have adopted the strategy of customer intimacy, studying the target market very closely, very precisely, studying their needs, their wants, and then tailoring products and services more closely toward the specific needs of the target market or target customer. So the firms which have adopted this strategy of customer intimacy have also been successful. And the firms have also been successful which have adopted the strategy of product leadership. We see many firms in gadgets, in technology products, successful because they are innovating firms. They are product leaders. They are able to innovate faster than others. They are able to bring to market new products at a faster pace than any other competitor. So the leading customers or consumers are looking for these firms to introduce new products. So in household items like televisions, we can see there are certain brands which are synonymous with innovation. So these brands often introduce the newest designs of TVs and electronic gadgets. And very large number of customers who are early adopters are looking keenly for new introductions, and they want to buy quickly the new and the latest models. But then there are other customers who are not early adopters. They are more cautious. They want to see first if the technology has really been successful. They want the prices to come down. But then the other type of firms then come in at a later stage when the product is moving from the early stages of product life cycle. The technology is becoming more mature. The consumers are becoming more mature. Then they come in and they are able to produce and deliver products and services at a lower cost, more steady, more quality-oriented products. So these are different types of strategies. Now, which strategy a firm has to choose really depends on the firm's capabilities and the opportunity in the marketplace. But without adopting an appropriate strategy, a firm will not be able to align all its activities. All the activities of the firm, manufacturing, sourcing, procurement, supply, distribution, human resource, and other support function and other primary activities will never be aligned and optimized towards delivering a very sharp and strong value. But then adopting these strategies becomes even more tricky and complex when a firm is operating in many international markets. For example, if a firm in its own market is a cost leader, is able to conceptualize, to produce and to deliver products and services consistently at a lower cost than competition. If it's a consumer goods company, like packaged consumer goods company, then the firms can do if they have extensive relationship with the distribution systems, they have extensive distribution system of their own, and their production facilities which have scale economies, and if necessary those production facilities and their marketing departments are closer to the customers. But if firm has to continue to deliver the same values in distant markets, then it becomes a very different and very difficult proposition. Well, the shipping costs may be very high, shipping to other countries. Firm may not have access to extensive distribution system in foreign markets. Firm may not have strategic alliances which are needed to achieve low cost distribution and delivery to buyers. The firm may also need to customize products for each market. So customize advertisement for each market. That brings in additional costs. And these additional costs may not allow a firm to remain a cost leader in international markets. Similarly, if a firm really adopts a different strategy of differentiation and wants to differentiate its capabilities, its processes, and wants to have an image and a performance that it is different, it is superior in delivering certain attributes in products and services better than competition. For this type of strategy, it's very important for firm to be able to know the customer more, to be able to develop superior skills, and to be able to communicate that differentiation to the target market. A firm may be doing it very efficiently in their domestic markets, but once they go international, then people start to vary too much. A firm's access to that market also starts to vary too much. Firm's knowledge about those customers also start to vary too much. And firm's perceived brand image also changes from place to place. It becomes extremely tricky in order to achieve a consistent image and perception and differentiation in all the international markets in which a firm may want to operate. So these are the inherent difficulties when firms really want to operate in many international markets compared with domestic markets. Not just they have to adopt those strategies, but they have to ensure that when they are operating in many international markets, they are consistent in terms of performance, in terms of adopting those strategies. The firms are having global brands, global consistent image. We see many brands which are global now. We go to one country to another country, or we may go to 100 countries. We see those brands very consistently there in terms of their quality. And more importantly, in terms of perception in the minds of customers, they are also same. If they are upmarket brands, they are exclusive brands, or they stand for good quality, stand for certain features, or certain category of products, or certain category of benefits, then they are perceived in the same way in every market, everywhere in the world. Now that is an extremely complex proposition that requires firms to have extremely complex and superior capabilities to be able to achieve that consistency in terms of their strategy. But this is the essential step in marketing process. Only when a firm is able to adopt an appropriate strategy, a strategy which it can adopt consistently irrespective of various markets it wants to operate into, and a strategy which is suitable to attract the customer, that customer will perceive value or similar value wherever they are, whichever market they belong to. Only then a firm is able to develop correct marketing programs. So, developing and implementing marketing programs is the fourth essential step in international marketing process. And that comes after the firm has adopted an appropriate strategy. In order to conceptualize, develop and implement a marketing program, a firm has not only to communicate, means advertising, promotion, sales, it has also to develop appropriate products. It has also to price it appropriately. It also has to distribute in a consistent way, which you may have studied in the form of 4 P's of marketing. In fact, in many cases, there are more than these 4 P's. It's just because of its simplicity that this 4 P's model has become quite talked about. But certainly, there are many more things firm has to adopt, has to do in order to achieve, in order to implement a good marketing program. In case of service firms, the people are also very important. So various researchers have expanded this list to more than 10 such areas. So for simplicity's sake, let's assume that the marketing plan depends on 4 key areas, that is product, place, price, and promotion. The 4 P's of marketing. Now, if a firm has to adopt a consistent strategy, it has to achieve a consistent image in world markets, it has to ensure that the products are designed in a way that various consumers with their very different backgrounds, their difference in needs, their difference in social setups, perceive the products in more or less same way. We can take many examples of fast foods. There are many brands which are very successful worldwide, apparel brands which are global brands, many sports brands which are global brands, durable brands which are global brands, brands of durable goods like washing machines, household items, technology products like televisions, they are global brands. So they are perceived more or less in the same way. If the firm is a product leader, or whether a firm is having a cost focus, is able to deliver products of value at low cost, or whether the firm is able to adopt the strategy of customer intimacy, that it is able to supply and customize products according to the requirement of the specific buyers. We can take example of computer industry. All sorts of preferences exist in computer industry around the world. There are segments which prefer low cost standard machines. We can give examples of households. So many households around the world, they need computers, personal computers in their homes. But they're looking for standardized machines, not so complex, but modern machines are able to perform all necessary functions, able to have access to internet, able to do word processing, able to do basic functions of database management, and so on and so forth. So simple, standard machines at reasonable cost. So there is an international demand in every market for such machines. And we can find brands which are consistent with this image. We can find their machines being sold worldwide, very standard machines, at low cost and comparatively good enough quality, and they're selling. But then there are other computer makers who are synonymous with high quality machines, performance computers. Their speed is perhaps better, they are able to perform more complex functions, their quality is perhaps much more higher, they are also bringing in innovations, they also sell, and particularly attractive to such customers who are willing to pay more. But they're looking for better quality machines, more powerful machines, machines having more functions, able to do more complex jobs, and there are brands which are providing such computer equipment. But then we also see computer firms around the world which are tailoring products to the specific needs of their professional buyers. We can see people using computers in architecture work. We can see people using computers in hospital management. We see people using computers in retail environment. We see people using computer in their scientific research. So these are the type of people, especially the professionals, who want a machine, a computer machine, which is able to help them in their own specific work. Now, more often a standard machine may not be very, very relevant. So there are certain computer manufacturers who come and who study these buyers, and they have developed the capabilities and they adopt the strategies worldwide to customize the machine for the specific requirement of these professional buyers. Certainly the price is going to be higher because of this customization, and they're quite successful. But then these firms have worked very hard in order to achieve these successes in global markets. They have to come closer to buyers, closer to customers. They have to have access to distribution systems. They have to adhere to the different laws of nations, different requirements of various societies. They have to come to each market to advertise their brands, maybe sometime in local language. Need to translate the meaning for local advertisements. They need to have people on the ground in different markets to communicate with local customers, to understand their needs. They need engineers then to understand these different requirements, to be able to tailor those machines, and they need to deliver those machines to their customers. And then perhaps also they need to provide a good after-sales service in order to support their working of the machines, to ensure that machines are able to provide solutions in a good way on a continuous basis, and hence their customers are satisfied. So it requires a lot of effort, it requires complex effort, and it requires firms to adopt comprehensive marketing programs and to coordinate these marketing programs from all perspectives, from the perspectives of product design, building attributes in products, research and development, bringing innovations to products, customization of the products, standardization of the products. And they have to align these activities with their pricing activities, that the pricing of the product has to be appropriate. If it's an upmarket product, then accordingly the price in every market should be relevant to that image. And the price, since it is the element, it is the component of marketing mix which generates revenue. Every other component of marketing mix generates costs. So the price has to be set very sensibly. Not only that it has to convey the proper consistent image which a firm wants to achieve, but at the same time the price should be able to achieve maximum desired market share. The price should also be able to achieve the desired profits. Because the ultimate measure of value is not what customers perceive. The ultimate measure of value is the profitability of the firm. If the firm, in order to deliver the desired value, is not profitable, then firm cannot survive. So the ultimate objective of any firm, any commercial organization, or any even non-commercial organization, is to be able to continuously seek resources. And resources for commercial firms are through revenues in form of profits. The firms should be able to earn profits out of those prices. At the same time, the firms have to ensure that they have appropriate distribution systems. The distribution system is appropriate to support the type of strategy. If the firm wants to achieve the status of a cost focus, a firm which is able to deliver products and services at the lowest possible cost in every international market it operates, then the distribution systems should be able to deliver that. If the firm is a market leader, wants to maximize the delivery and distribution, wants to maximize the consumption, then the products and services must be efficiently and effectively delivered to every possible required nook and corner of the market and international markets. If the firm wants to highly differentiate itself, that it is targeting selected target customers with a differentiated image, well, that differentiated image has also to be supported by the distribution system. The distribution system must be able to convey that impression that this firm is different. It must also be able to deliver the products and services of the firm to the target customers. So distribution system is again extremely important, not only to achieve the desired strategy, desired distribution, achieve desired cost, but also to achieve the desired image. So these aspects of marketing program, product, place, price, and promotion, will depend on the chosen strategy. So once firm has adopted these marketing programs, then there is a last step to implement these programs appropriately. Designing is still an easy part. For implementing these programs, firms need funds, need resources, and needs infrastructure on the ground. A firm may have capabilities in developing and designing products, excellent capabilities perhaps. A firm may have excellent marketing programs on paper, but if firm does not have the resources and the structure on the ground to implement these programs, then there is no use. More often than not, the firms are able to conceptualize good marketing programs, are able to conceptually adopt a perfect marketing strategy for international markets. But the firms often fail in implementing these programs for one reason or another. One of the key reasons is, of course, resources. Firms are not able to acquire proper resources, proper funds perhaps, in order to ensure that they are able to implement these programs successfully on ground. Or firms lack to have infrastructure or access to other resources, or can get bogged down into legal situations and rules and regulations of various countries, the standards and requirements that it fails to implement, or it is unable to implement its marketing strategy on the ground. Or the firm is not able to really evaluate and keep a track of its marketing program, because marketing programs are not something which are implemented and reap in matter of days or weeks. These are the programs which start to mature, start to show results over many years. So firm has to consistently work over many years, has to consistently monitor these programs over years, and has to consistently implement and monitor these programs not only in one market, but in all the international market it operates. So quite often, firms are not successful because they are not able to implement these programs properly. So to conclude today's lecture on international marketing process, we have identified 5 critical steps in the international marketing process. These 5 steps are identifying opportunities in international marketing places. The second step is selecting target markets. The third step is adopting appropriate international marketing strategy. The fourth step is to develop international marketing programs based on the chosen international marketing strategy. And finally, to implement these programs appropriately and successfully on ground. Thank you very much.